In the United States, there exists a criminal network so elite, so deeply hidden, that most Americans don't even know it exists. These aren't street criminals or ordinary gang members. These are the thieves in law, the highest-ranking criminals in the underworld, a group that operates with military discipline, ruthless silence, and a centuries-old code that even the FBI fears. Their power stretches from New York to Los Angeles, quietly controlling millions of dollars through extortion, cybercrime, luxury theft rings, and international smuggling routes. What makes them terrifying is not just their crimes, but how invisible they are. No social media, no tattoos, no flashy cars. They blend into American life like ghosts while pulling the strings behind massive criminal operations. Even top federal agents admit that these men are harder to track than any American gang, cartel, or mafia family. Tonight, you're entering a world few have ever seen, the dark aristocracy of crime. A world where loyalty is blood, betrayal means execution, and one secret command can shake entire cities. This is the hidden empire of America's most elite criminals. And once you hear their story, you'll never look at organized crime the same way again. When the thieves in law first arrived in the United States, almost nobody noticed. They did not come with large gangs, flashy clothes, or loud violence. They came quietly, traveling through immigration routes, hiding inside ordinary communities, and blending into a country that had no idea what true criminal royalty looked like. Their origins go back to the brutal Soviet prison system, where the strongest criminals were crowned as vori v zakone, thieves in law, men who earned their status through sacrifice, violence, loyalty, and complete rejection of authority. When the Soviet Union collapsed, many of these crowned thieves scattered around the world, carrying with them a criminal system more disciplined than any mafia America had ever seen. Their first step in the U.S. was observation. They watched how American gangs operated, how money flowed, and how law enforcement responded. They realized something important. In America, everyone is connected through cash. Businesses, nightclubs, transport companies, pawn shops, hotels, and small convenience stores. All of them offered opportunities for money laundering and underground transactions. The thieves didn't need to take over the streets. They needed to take over the money. So they built networks slowly. A small restaurant owner who needed protection. A businessman drowning in debt. A car dealer willing to move stolen luxury vehicles. Every connection gave them power, and every favor made someone dependent on them. They didn't ask for loyalty. They created situations where loyalty became the only way to survive. What made them different was their absolute discipline. American gangs often fought openly, but the thieves in law operated like a silent army. They held meetings in basements or private rooms of restaurants. They used coded language that only members understood. No phones, no recordings, no unnecessary conversations. Every move was calculated. Every decision was based on the code. They also brought something America had never seen before. A criminal ranking system older than the country itself. Only a small number of men were truly crowned thieves. These crowned members had authority to give orders, settle disputes, and expand the network. Under them were trusted workers, people who handled money, logistics, and communication. Beneath those were street-level associates who followed orders without question. This structure allowed them to grow without chaos or internal wars. Their income streams expanded quickly. They specialized in high-value crimes, luxury car theft rings, jewelry heists, credit card cloning operations, and high-level fraud. But even these crimes weren't the core of their power. Their true strength was in the underground financial system they created. Money flowed through shell companies, fake charities, construction businesses, and cash-heavy stores. Millions could move across states without leaving a trace. Law enforcement saw scattered crimes, small scams, stolen cars, or minor fraud, but they didn't realize these pieces were connected to a larger puzzle. The thieves preferred it that way. They never bragged. They never sought fame. Their goal was to become invisible at the top while making millions from below. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, they had already built a quiet empire. Communities in New York, Los Angeles, Miami, and Chicago had unknowingly become hubs for their operations. Agencies like the FBI were aware of European mafias, Italian families, and Mexican cartels. But this new silent network was something entirely different. They operated without borders, without noise, and without mercy for those who broke their code. The foundation was set. The American underworld had a new player, not loud, not reckless, but terrifyingly organized. A criminal elite was rising in silence, preparing for the expansion that would change everything. As the thieves-in-law grew their presence in the United States, their operations shifted from cautious observation to strategic domination. They realized that America was a land of opportunity not just for honest workers, but for criminals who understood how to exploit the system without drawing attention. The thieves did not rely on violence to expand. They relied on intelligence, calculation, and the weaknesses of the financial system. Their next phase was to take control of the money flowing beneath the surface of American society. They began by building strong alliances, something they rarely did in their home countries. In America, they understood that power wasn't always gained through force. Sometimes, influence was more effective. They established quiet partnerships with local street gangs, letting those gangs handle small crimes while the thieves focused on large-scale operations. They offered protection, money laundering services, and connections to the international market. In return, the gangs provided manpower and access to local territories without ever realizing they were serving a much larger criminal empire. Their main specialty became financial crimes. Credit card fraud, identity theft, shell corporations, insurance scams, and high-level cybercrime turned into the perfect tools for them. Unlike drug cartels or traditional mafias, the thieves didn't need to smuggle massive shipments or engage in public shootouts. With a laptop, a few encrypted devices, and the right people, they could steal millions without firing a single shot. Money laundering became their true art. They used restaurants, car dealerships, construction firms, shipping companies, beauty salons, and even small churches as fronts. Cash moved from one business to another, disappearing across borders within hours. The thieves were experts at blending illegal money with legitimate revenue, making law enforcement's job nearly impossible. FBI analysts often found financial trails that looked suspicious, but the patterns were so complex that connecting them to the thieves required years of investigation. Another tactic that gave them immense power was their ability to infiltrate American society. They didn't behave like criminals. They dressed well, attended community events, supported local businesses, and blended into immigrant communities where police presence was already low. Some even married into American families, giving them both legitimacy and deeper access to resources. Despite this public calmness, their internal code remained ironclad. Disobedience, betrayal, or disloyalty were dealt with harshly. The thieves used intimidation as their strongest weapon. They rarely needed to harm anyone physically. One quiet threat, one visit from a trusted enforcer, or one reminder of the Brotherhood's reach was often enough to keep people in line. Those who did cross the line, however, faced consequences that were brutal but silent. Bodies disappeared, debts were collected, and families were pressured into silence. By the mid-2000s, the thieves had grown so large that federal agencies began noticing strange patterns in bank reports, immigration data, and cross-country money movement. Multiple small investigations suddenly pointed in the same direction, toward a hidden network that seemed to be everywhere but nowhere at the same time. Yet despite their suspicions, the FBI still had no clear idea who the leaders were, where they lived, or how deeply their influence reached. The thieves-in-law had become something unique in America, a criminal aristocracy ruling from the shadows, using money instead of bullets, intelligence instead of brute force, and a centuries-old code instead of modern gang culture. They had taken the American underworld and reshaped it into a silent empire, one that grew stronger with every passing year while remaining virtually invisible. The moment federal agencies finally realized the scale of the thieves in law was when a massive credit card cloning ring spanning more than 15 states collapsed under its own weight. Agents discovered millions of dollars moved through encrypted channels, fake identities, offshore accounts, and businesses that looked legitimate from the outside but were controlled by shadow figures with no digital footprints. At the center of the entire operation was a man with no history in the U.S., no official background, and fingerprints that matched an old Soviet prison file. It was the first undeniable evidence that the thieves in law had established a strong presence in America. From that moment on, law enforcement shifted its focus. What they found was disturbing. The thieves operated on a level of discipline and secrecy unlike any gang the FBI had ever encountered. These criminals didn't live flashy lives. They didn't attract attention with guns, tattoos, or social media brags. Instead, they lived quietly, running legitimate-looking businesses while managing illegal operations with corporate-level precision. They understood surveillance, counter-surveillance, and digital evasion better than most criminals. Many of them had military or intelligence backgrounds from the post-Soviet era, giving them skills that made them extremely hard to track. Investigators soon learned that the thieves divided themselves into specialized crews. One group handled financial crimes, fraud, credit card cloning, cryptocurrency laundering, and hacking networks. Another crew worked on logistics, transport routes, stolen goods shipments, smuggling operations, and distribution channels. A third group focused purely on internal enforcement. These were the wolves, loyal enforcers who carried out punishments, debt collection, and silent disappearances. They never posted online, never used phones for criminal discussions, and were known for delivering violent retribution without leaving evidence. Yet the most dangerous members were the crowned thieves themselves, the elite leaders who never touched illegal operations directly. They communicated only through trusted couriers, coded messages, and face-to-face meetings. These meetings were held in places that seemed harmless, small apartments, back rooms of restaurants, or remote locations where cell signals were weak. Decisions were made collectively, and every major operation needed approval from higher-ranking members. This structure ensured unity, prevented betrayal, and maintained a level of order that American gangs lacked. One of the biggest challenges for investigators was the thieves' ability to vanish. A suspect under surveillance for months could disappear overnight, leaving behind an empty apartment, wiped electronics, and neighbors who barely knew he existed. They used multiple identities, sometimes switching passports, names, and backgrounds with the help of corrupt officials overseas. When a thief sensed a possible arrest, he simply left the country, moved to another state, or went deeper underground. This mobility made it nearly impossible for law enforcement to build a complete profile. What shocked investigators even more was the thieves' influence over other criminal groups. Instead of competing with Italian mafias, Hispanic gangs, or Eastern European syndicates, the thieves in law often acted as mediators, facilitators, or financial partners. They connected groups that had never cooperated before, creating a kind of criminal bridge that expanded their reach across multiple states and even multiple continents. By helping others make money, they increased their own power and secured loyalty from dangerous allies. By the early 2000s, the thieves had grown into a silent empire, running financial operations worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Federal agencies launched Operation Vor, one of the largest crackdowns on Eastern European organized crime in American history. Dozens were arrested, but to the frustration of investigators, the core leadership slipped away once again. For every thief captured, another one quietly replaced him, keeping the organization alive and adapting even faster. The message became clear. The thieves in law were not just another gang. They were a global criminal system perfected over generations, now operating inside the United States with precision that law enforcement had never seen before. As pressure from federal agencies increased, the thieves-in-law shifted into a new phase, one defined by survival, adaptation, and the ruthless elimination of anyone who threatened their operations. Unlike traditional American crime groups that reacted emotionally under pressure, the thieves treated law enforcement crackdowns like a chess match. Every arrest, every raid, and every investigation was a move on the board, and they responded with strategy, not panic. Their first rule was to sever weak links. Anyone who showed fear, talked too much, or attracted unnecessary attention was quietly removed. Sometimes removal meant relocation, sent to another state or even another country. Other times, removal meant disappearance. The thieves believed that exposing the Brotherhood was the greatest possible betrayal, and they punished betrayal with absolute finality. Enforcers were dispatched with cold efficiency. No traces, no witnesses, no bodies left behind. Law enforcement would suddenly find a suspect gone, an informant missing, or a witness retracting their statements in fear. The thieves also began using modern technology in unexpected ways. While most criminals left digital footprints, these men mastered digital invisibility. They avoided smartphones entirely, or used devices that were wiped after every call. Communication happened through encrypted channels, disposable SIMs, coded phrases, or in-person meetings arranged through layers of intermediaries. Investigators often found themselves chasing shadows, emails sent from public Wi-Fi, burner phones active for minutes, car rentals under fake identities, and bank transfers broken into hundreds of small amounts to avoid detection. But their real genius was in how they adapted their financial operations. When banks strengthened their fraud detection software, the thieves shifted to cryptocurrency. When cryptocurrency monitoring increased, they moved back to old methods. Cash couriers, hidden compartments in vehicles, luxury goods converted into liquid assets. They were fluid, flexible, and ahead of authorities at every turn. Their alliances also deepened. Instead of shrinking under pressure, they expanded by partnering with other groups who faced similar challenges. Cybercriminals from Eastern Europe provided digital tools. Small American gangs handled low-level tasks. Corrupt businessmen offered access to government contracts and city infrastructure projects. Through these alliances, the thieves didn't just survive crackdowns, they profited from them. While other groups were distracted by arrests, the thieves bought their businesses, stole their clients, and absorbed their operations. One of the most chilling aspects of their rise was how they infiltrated legitimate institutions. Some members became silent partners in construction companies that won million-dollar government contracts. Others invested in logistics firms tied to ports, giving them access to shipping containers from across the world. A few even entered political circles through donations, charity organizations, and community programs. No one knew their true identities. To the outside world, these were respected businessmen, generous donors, or quiet neighbors. But behind the scenes, they were key players in an underworld empire that stretched from America to Europe, the Middle East, and beyond. The thieves also strengthened their internal code. Younger members were trained with discipline. No drugs, no unnecessary violence, no media exposure, no reckless behavior. They were required to memorize the Brotherhood's laws, rules designed to ensure loyalty, silence, and obedience. Break the code, and there was no forgiveness. This strict system gave the organization a stability American gangs could only dream of. Meanwhile, law enforcement's frustration grew. Every time investigators closed in, the thieves slipped through cracks in the system, loopholes in immigration laws, weak financial regulations, and limited cooperation between international agencies. They understood the system better than the people enforcing it. By the mid-2000s, the thieves had evolved into something far more powerful than anyone expected. They were no longer just a criminal network. They were a hidden ruling class of the underworld, using intelligence over violence, discipline over chaos, and invisibility over fame. and the bigger they became, the harder it was to stop them. By the late 2000s, the thieves-in-law had reached the height of their influence in the United States. What began as a silent infiltration had now grown into a shadow empire, wealthy, disciplined, and almost untouchable. But with power came attention, and eventually, law enforcement launched the most coordinated operation ever attempted against them. Multiple agencies, FBI, Homeland Security, Secret Service, and Interpol, shared intelligence, finally realizing they weren't dealing with small groups of scattered criminals. They were facing a global structure with military-level strategy. The war began quietly. Agents started tracking financial trails, movements of couriers, and coded communications. They used undercover operatives, wiretaps, and international bank records. For the first time, law enforcement wasn't reacting. They were attacking. Cell leaders were identified. Safe houses were mapped out. Businesses used for laundering were flagged. The thieves noticed immediately. They sensed the pressure, but instead of panicking, they adapted like they always had, strategically and silently. Their leaders held emergency meetings in remote locations, discussing who needed to disappear, which operations to shut down, and where to move their money. Some members left the country overnight, slipping through airports with false identities. Others switched roles, becoming legitimate businessmen to protect themselves. A few younger members were sacrificed, not killed, but strategically arrested to mislead investigators and protect the core leadership. But the thieves underestimated one thing: the digital revolution. No matter how skilled they were, some of their younger associates relied on technology, text messages, social media, encrypted phones. One small mistake by a mid-level operator led investigators to a warehouse in New Jersey used as a command center for international fraud. From there, authorities uncovered a chain of evidence linking multiple cities, dozens of accounts, and several high-ranking members. For the first time, federal agents felt they were close. Operation Silent Crown began. It was one of the largest simultaneous raids in U.S. organized crime history. Homes, businesses, storage units, and warehouses were stormed across several states. Nearly 100 people connected to the organization were arrested. Millions of dollars in cash, gold, stolen items, and false documents were seized. For the FBI, it was a major victory. But the true leaders? They were gone. When authorities arrived at their residences, they found empty closets, wiped computers, and neighbors who barely remembered the men living there. Some leaders fled to Europe. Others vanished into communities that protected them. A few simply disappeared from the face of the earth. Despite the massive operation, the heart of the organization slipped away once again. This was the moment that changed everything. Federal agencies finally understood that this criminal network could not be dismantled with raids alone. The thieves-in-law were not like American gangs that fell apart after major arrests. Their structure allowed them to replace missing members instantly. Their code kept them disciplined. Their international connections kept them safe. And their ability to vanish kept them alive. Even more alarming, within months of the raids, new operations began emerging, smaller, smarter, harder to detect. Younger members adapted by using deeper levels of encryption, cryptocurrency mixers, offshore servers, and decentralized communication networks. Instead of collapsing, the thieves evolved. Today, the thieves-in-law remain one of the most mysterious and resilient criminal groups operating in America. They do not appear in headlines. They do not fight public wars. They do not brag or seek fame. Their power is in their silence. Their strength is in their discipline. Their control comes from a code older than the United States itself. And while authorities have caught some, many more still operate in the shadows. Quiet, calculated, invisible. The question that haunts investigators is simple. How do you stop an enemy you can barely see? The truth is, the thieves are still here, still operating, still watching. And the dark aristocracy of America's underworld remains very much alive.